This episode of the Watch and Listen podcast is brought to you by Crown & Caliber. Crown & Caliber has over 2,000 luxury watches in stock at any given time, from brands like Rolex, Omega, AP, Patek, Breitling, and all the majors and some of the minors. Looking for a watch? Crown & Caliber can help you find and acquire that watch in a non-shady manner. Do you have maybe an extra watch or two laying around that you used to wear, you don't wear anymore? Maybe it was a gift, maybe your style changed, maybe you just need some money. Crown & Caliber wants to buy that watch, maybe trade that watch. That's how they get the beautiful stock that they have. And speaking of which, I now have some personal experience in this department because I just did a trade where I traded two of my watches for one much nicer watch from Crown & Caliber. And I can say now as a customer that the experience of filling out the form to trade the watch, it literally took about 45 seconds to fill out. They asked me a few basic questions that should be pretty obvious to anyone who is trying to sell anything of value. I then added a brief description and a few photographs, and I submitted, and it all was very, very nice and easy. As a special treat for our Watch and Listen people, use code MATT150, MATT150 at crowncaliber.com to get $150 off your purchase. That's a one-time use code, so get it and get it now. MATT150, $150 off anything at Crown & Caliber. Buy a watch, sell a watch, trade a watch, and thank you for supporting our show. This episode of Watch and Listen is also brought to you by Beeline Coffee. Beeline Coffee has been a sponsor of my other show, The Smoking Tire, for a while. I worked with them to develop a custom roast, the Smoking Tire Roast. Listen to this. That's me having some. These beans are ridiculous. Single origin, micro batch, roasted with love and care. It ain't cheap, but if you're into coffee, this is the real deal deliciousness. We've had rave reviews from various coffee snob Instagram accounts. Thank you for all that. Use code TST. Or code Chrono. Sometimes old habits die hard. Code Chrono at BeelineCoffee.com. Get yourself anything in their online store, any of their roasts, for 15% off. That's right. BeelineCoffee.com. Code Chrono, 15% off. Now, let's get to the show. In this episode of the Watch and Listen podcast, Cameron and I we'll be discussing crazy escapements. The escapement is what actually regulates the time in your watch, and for something so small and so precise, and for something that's been doing fundamentally the same job for several hundred years now, you would be shocked at how many different kinds of escapements there are. And so I hope you enjoy this episode. Subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/watch and listen podcast. We're on shoutengine.com/watch and listen. You can also search for us on iTunes and any of the Android platforms. Now enjoy this episode of Watch and Listen. Here it is, folks. Welcome. This is the show. It's the Watch and Listen podcast. Matt Farah here. It's your boy. Learn about watches. My pal, Cameron Weiss. What's happening, brother?
Well, a lot of work getting ready for the escapement episode. There's a lot of weird stuff out there right now.
This one today we're talking about escapements and what it is, what they do, why some of them are weird, why some of them are better than others. I don't know about better. We'll see. Different.
Yeah,
it's definitely different. First off, housekeeping items. Thank all of you for subscribing. Hopefully you've done that. For watching and listening. Our numbers are looking very good, which is nice. We now have a custom URL on YouTube, which let's show you that right there. Boom. Here it is. It's the Watch and Listen podcast, youtube.com/watch and listen podcast. Oops, I didn't pull up the whole channel. That's the behind the scenes. There it is. And of course, We are on Shout Engine, shoutengine.com/watch and listen. It's a little funky because it's youtube.com/watch and listen podcast, but shoutengine.com/watch and listen. I know that's not ideal, but it's kind of the way it had to be because we couldn't get the YouTube channel Watch and Listen by itself. I'm sorry. We're also on iTunes. We're also on any of the streaming platforms. Hit up Cameron's Instagram. Cameron, I think we need to change this one top picture of you, buddy.
That's an old one.
I know, that's what I'm saying. We need to update you like in the van with the dog and, to reflect your current lifestyle. This is not a California lifestyle, Cameron.
Yeah, that was probably four years ago.
Yeah, we need a much more California photo for you there. And then follow me on Instagram, The Smoking Tire, and of course my other podcast, Smoking Tire Podcast, and YouTube's videos. So, Cameron Weiss, watchmaker, where does one begin an episode of about escapements?
Swiss Lever.
Where do you even start?
Swiss Lever Escapement.
Okay.
It's the traditional escapement that's used today on every watch that would have a traditional escapement in it.
And we have your watch, which uses that, right? Is that how you want to start?
Yeah, my watch has the Swiss Lever Escapement in it.
Boom. We zoom in. I'm glad that all of you out there were so kind and commented nice things about our new watch cam. Some people asked what it's called an IPEVO. IPEVO. I got it on Amazon. So it's whatever. You roll the dice, you win some, you lose some. We won this one. It's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so to start, I'm the student here, and I don't know a whole lot about escapements. They kind of confuse me and intimidate me.
Well, they're quite simple once you get down to the little details in them. I have one here on the screen that I actually kind of opened it up, and the escapement includes your balance wheel, which if you've ever had an open watch where you can see the case through the case back, the balance wheel is what's bouncing back and forth really quick. The one thing that's moving quickly, and you can really see it move. The
center of the action of your watch is the balance wheel.
Yeah.
Okay. And is the balance wheel, if you had a tourbillon, that's what's going to be inside the tourbillon, right?
Yeah, balance wheel is contained within the tourbillon.
Yeah. Tourbillon keeps that from getting all out of whack from gravity, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Because there's a spring that's coiled, and if you could imagine a spring that's coiled, if you hang it one way instead of another way, it's going to droop.
Right.
Because of gravity.
So, can you get your little pointer out here for the visual folks? So point out on your movement, and in fact, let me just zoom out a little bit. So those of you at home know what part of the movement. Here's your Cameron's movement, and this temp crown here is where you would wind it, right?
Yes.
What do you call that? Like a service crown or something?
Working stem.
Okay, working stem.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's what we use when we're servicing a movement. It's easier because a lot of times the crowns will be decorative, and we don't want to damage the crown itself. Mm-hmm. Whoops. Don't want to damage the crown itself, and we also don't want to have a really short one that is hard to manipulate, and this makes it really easy.
Great. So, your movement, what are we looking at here?
So, we've got the balance wheel flipped upside down. The balance wheel is on the balance bridge here, and it's just been flipped upside down once we removed it.
Just so people can tell the difference, can you pick up that balance wheel assembly and just show that it's separate from the watch?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that's that. And where did you just pull that out of in the watch?
So that part
it goes in there.
Goes in right here.
So it looks remarkably cohesive when it's put together, and then you pull one thing out and go, "Oh, what am I looking at here?"
Exactly.
All right.
So that's removed.
Okay. This episode might be a little more visual, folks, if you're just listening at home, because we have to point at a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So, escapements they're tiny. And they only really serve one function, right? They just go about it in very different ways.
Yeah, and there's a couple of culprits that cause problems with the escapement and timekeeping. So those culprits are really what weird escapements kind of focus on, these oddball escapements that are different than the Swiss lever.
They're trying to solve a certain problem.
Yeah.
Okay, so show me how yours works. I'll zoom back in down.
Yeah, let's zoom in a little bit.
There we go.
So in the Swiss lever, you've got your balance wheel, And there's my little pointer there. So right on the bottom of the balance wheel, we have a roller jewel. This red pin hangs down from the underside of the balance wheel. And as that balance wheel oscillates back and forth, that jewel will interact with your pallet fork, which is another part of the escapement.
Okay.
Now, the pallet fork has a pivot right here. The tail is what gets knocked back and forth, just like this.
So the wheel
By that
moving back
jewel.
and forth moves that pallet fork back and forth.
Exactly.
And
It
that
knocks
causes
that pallet
something on
fork.
the other end to happen.
Yes. So then on the other end, in here, the pallet fork has two jewels, like horns almost, that stop the escapement, or the escape wheel. The escape
go to
wheel.
that?
Yeah,
Do you
let's
wanna
switch
go
to the other
Okay,
picture
we're
here.
gonna go to the animation photo here.
So on this photo, you can see those three components. From the right to the left, you've got your roller table that has the roller jewel. You've got your pallet fork that's going to be knocked back and forth, and you've got your escape wheel.
And this is not showing the balance wheel.
Yeah, the balance wheel has been removed because
Yeah.
it would kind of obscure some of the other parts.
Yeah.
But the balance wheel would be over the roller jewel all the way on the right.
Yeah, that's this guy here. If you're those of you looking at my screen.
So the main thing is to release teeth in an organized fashion rather than the watch just unwinding quickly. So you want the balance wheel to travel back and forth at a certain rate so that it locks and unlocks teeth on your escape wheel at regular intervals.
Yeah, so the short version of that is that this wheel bangs back and forth, and it causes this thing to sort of tiptoe dance back and forth, and the tiptoeing dance action moves a cog wheel 1 increment per second, right?
Yeah, it
Roughly.
allows the wheel to move.
Yeah.
It doesn't move it, but it allows it to move.
Oh yeah, it's like releasing a stopper briefly
Exactly.
and then restopping.
Yeah. So with that, the problem you have is there's a lot of sliding friction, and there's a lot of difference between a watch that's fully wound and a watch that is almost out of power.
Okay, so it'll literally slow down and weaken as it runs out of juice.
It can.
Yeah.
It's not supposed to, but nothing's perfect.
Right. So, well, if it's a problem, then what is that the problem that it would slow down? Because the spring is losing power as it gets to the end.
It won't always slow down.
Could it speed up?
It can speed up.
Okay.
If
So-
you think about the oscillation of the balance wheel moving fewer degrees, it could potentially move those fewer degrees quicker.
That's a good point.
It shouldn't, but it could.
Either way, it ain't reading what it's supposed to read.
Yeah.
That's the point. Okay. All right. So that's your standard issue, right?
And one other thing.
Oh, you want to go back to your watch here? Oh.
Actually, back to the
Okay, sorry.
picture here. So one other thing, if you see how the balance wheel, it has to keep moving. So something has to tap the balance wheel and keep it going. And the thing that taps the balance wheel is actually power from the escape wheel pressing on the jewels here, these angled portions,
Yeah.
sliding against them. And as they slide against it, it knocks the the pallet fork back the other way and actually hits that jewel to give it a tap in the other direction.
Oh, so it
To keep
doesn't.
the balance
it's
moving.
not just the motion of the spring bouncing against its other way. It actually gets a kick the other way.
Yeah, it gets a kick, and then the spring brings it back
Right.
down to interact with the...
Okay, so it's not like taking something on a string and dropping a pendulum and then just letting it come back. It's like a guy at each side of the pendulum kicking it back.
yes.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
In theory, I don't know. Is there a better metaphor than that? You got a better metaphor?
It's a little bit of both, because you have the power from the balance spring, which is the fine spring that's on that wheel.
Yeah.
It's very weak, not a lot of power. So it comes down and just releases the pallet fork.
Yeah.
And then the power from the main spring that's going into the escapement through the escape wheel is free to unwind very
Right.
quickly for a very short period of time. So that energy punches back and adds a little more power into your balance spring so it can keep going.
Yeah.
Then it'll come back again, release
So
a tooth.
just enough power to offset the losses, the
Yes.
inertia losses, right?
Yeah.
And ideally the exact amount of power to offset the losses,
Yeah.
not more. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Okay, I think I get that. I
Right.
mean,
It's not too complex.
Okay, let's go back to your watch here, and then show me back in real life all those parts again.
So what we've got is the balance wheel
Yeah.
with the roller jewel,
Uh-huh.
and the balance wheel will be going back and forth, hitting this side of your pallet fork, which is the tail end. If I can do this.
And the bit that actually knocks on that pallet fork is the little jewel on the end of the wheel there, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
That little jewel that hangs down.
Uh-huh.
So if you see, I'm going to touch this very lightly.
We're zoomed in.
And then
This
it's
is
gonna-
where the microscope cam would have come in,
Yeah.
right?
So I'm just going to touch the tail very lightly, just like the jewel would. And it's going to actually jump forward
Okay.
because not all the power is coming from the jewel.
Right. Oh,
You
yeah.
see how I just kind of tap it?
Yeah, and it just moved on its own.
So this jewel taps it, and then this wheel will pull it forward the rest of the way. And as it kind of pulls it forward the rest of the way, it'll then hit the other side of the jewel
Uh-huh.
and knock it the other way to keep it moving.
Cool.
You constantly have to put power back into it.
Okay.
But there's a lot of sliding friction in there, which requires lubricants, which dry out over time. And also the sliding friction, you lose energy.
Yeah, so it actually requires like oils.
Yes.
Is it grease or is it oil? What is it?
So on the escapement, there's actually a different type of oil that hardens when it's not moving and becomes liquid when it moves.
Okay.
So as the jewel strikes the tooth and the tooth then runs along it, the oil becomes liquid.
Huh.
When
And
it is not touching,
It
it's
becomes
solid so that it doesn't move on the jewel to a place that it's not needed.
Wow, that's so weird.
Yeah, so it's a very unique oil that goes onto the pallet jewels.
Is it very expensive and or rare?
Very expensive.
Really?
Yes.
How expensive is it?
It's more expensive than gold. It's
Okay.
very, very expensive. A little.
And what do you buy a jar of it that lasts you like a year or something? What do you do? Do you require stocking this stuff at the Weiss Watch Company?
Yeah. And I've actually never run out of a jar.
And
the jars
the
are
first jar you ever bought, you're still using.
Yeah, the jars are like these tiny little things.
What's
just,
it? Wait, can I find this on the internet? What is this? What is this called? I gotta say.
Yeah, it's gonna be 9415.
9415. That's what
Yes.
it's called.
And you can just put in watch oil.
9415 watch oil. Is this it?
Yep.
It's not that expensive.
You're getting 2 milliliters.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, look, all right.
And
so
for 2 millimeters or milliliters,
So
you'll
it's-
then throw away 1.8 of it at the end.
wait, what? So this is 2 milliliters,
Yeah,
and why do you throw away 1.8 of it?
because you'll never go through it in the time.
Oh, it'll
that it's good.
expire
It'll
before.
expire,
Okay,
yeah.
so you have to spend $40 every 5 years on this stuff.
Yeah, and even
okay.
just transferring from this thing, well, you wouldn't ever want to service somebody's watch and put in grease that's going to expire in the
soon,
next.
yeah.
So really, every year you should get new oils.
Okay, so like, look, yeah, by volume, okay, more
Yeah.
expensive than gold, but the
Exactly.
fact is, it's $38 a year if you're a professional.
We just like talking about it as very expensive
Yeah, you
because
just-
it wows people
No,
when
yeah.
we talk that way.
I feel you, but you just picked the most ridiculously cherry-picked exaggerative method.
It's very fancy and specific oil.
Yeah,
That's
All
the
right.
point.
Yeah. Saffron is more expensive than heroin, but you
Yeah.
need 8 pennies worth of it to make dinner. But they only sell it in like $60 increments. I know
Yeah.
what you mean. Yeah.
Yep.
All right, 2 milliliters for $40. That's expensive.
Yeah.
Okay, fair. I'll give you. It is expensive by volume. All right, so that's our Swiss Lever Escapement, and in addition to your Caliber 1003 movement, that's in like most watches, right?
Yeah, that should be in every watch except for Rolex. Rolex has their own version of
Well,
oil.
not the oil. I was talking about the escapement.
Oh, the
I'm
escapement?
sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, I apologize.
The escapement will be in almost every watch unless there's some marketable different escapement that they've put in it, like
which
the
there are,
coaxial,
which
the
is
Omega Coaxial.
which is what the whole rest of this show is about.
Yes.
So in the first 14 minutes of this show, we've covered 95% of the mechanical watch market, right?
Yeah.
Maybe not 95, but like the great majority.
Really, if you put the Omega Coaxial in there, you've covered like 99.5% of them. Because the only escapement that anyone's making in any kind of volume that's not the Swiss lever is going to be that Omega Coaxial.
Okay, well let's go to that. Here is the Omega Coaxial Escapement, and
Yes.
And we do have a watch. And
Yeah.
it is my watch for the next 12 hours. I made a deal, son. I made a trade. This watch is it's got to go, but this has the Omega Coaxial movement. So what coaxial? You generally two things on one axis. This is what that word means. There's something shares an axis. So what are we looking at in this coaxial movement here, or coaxial escapement? Excuse me.
So the coaxial escapement, first thing that you look at, you're going to see a very odd-shaped wheel that is very different than the standard escape wheel.
Are we referring to the throwing star-like wheel
exactly,
in the center there?
The ninja star right there.
Ninja star escapement, yeah.
Yeah. So you've got that, and then you've also got 3 jewels on the Palate Fork instead of 2.
So your Pallet Fork in this image is right here, sort of to the south of the escapement.
And it kind of ends up.
This is called the escapement wheel, right? I'm not an idiot.
Okay,
this called?
Yeah. For this, we'll call it the escape wheel.
Okay.
And then you've got the Palate Fork.
Yes.
The Palate Fork here is really only working on that wheel.
Mm-hmm.
The wheel is also putting direct energy back into the balance. If you look here, you've got 2 jewels on the balance.
Remember, Cameron, we're on the radio. Where is here?
The center of the balance wheel.
Okay.
So back where we had the roller jewel, which is on the bottom of the balance wheel.
Yeah.
Now we've got 2 roller jewels.
One on each side.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Slightly different shape because they're doing different things.
Mm-hmm.
But the big takeaway from this is by splitting the wheel into multiple levels, there's now less sliding friction
Okay.
on those jewels and the escape wheel. So less sliding friction.
Because you get the same 2 functions are sharing the friction. They're dividing the friction among multiple jobs.
Yeah, exactly. Onto multiple wheels.
Yeah.
So you've got fewer teeth and fewer. The angle of drag with that slide is much shorter.
Okay.
So it's almost like the 2 parts are coming together and just like bouncing off of each other very quickly. Whereas on the Swiss lever, you've got these parts interacting and they kind of touch and then they drag and push and there's a lot of friction, which is why you need that oil there because the stones will wear out.
And what happens when they do?
When they wear out, they have to be replaced.
And that's service.
Yeah.
And we're getting to that next episode.
Yeah.
Okay, so coaxial. So what are the functions exactly that are sharing this axis?
So you've got things called locking, unlocking, impulse. These are all things that take place as the watch is doing its tick-tock.
Yeah.
There's actually 5 noises in a Swiss lever escapement where you've got, you would think just tick and tock, but there's actually a whole bunch of these clanging parts where they bang together, and we have equipment in our workshops that actually listen to it, and we make sure that the timing between all of those noises that they hear in the escapement
is this how
are properly timed.
And is this how you time a watch?
Yeah.
Ah.
So that's how we make sure the escapement is properly set.
Ah. And the escapement is adjustable then, presumably,
On a
right?
Swiss lever, the escapement is adjustable,
Uh-huh.
which is also another reason why it's a very good escapement, very reliable, and serviceable.
Right.
The Omega Coaxial, not an adjustable escapement.
Okay, so what do you do?
So the only reason that it's possible is because of modern manufacturing. We're able to now make these parts accurate enough where the jewel goes here, or the 3 jewels in the Pallet Fork, really, go where they go, and they're not going to be moved ever.
No service.
The service would be to replace the pallet fork.
whole thing.
Yeah. Whereas on a Swiss lever, you can actually move the stones in and out to balance out the timing so that everything happens right when it's supposed to happen.
Oh, this is so funny. There's so many parallels to cars because, you hear about the lifetime transmission fluid, where it's like a sealed transmission and the service is to replace the entire thing, or you have to even if you have to service a suspension component in some cars, like some modern cars, my old Ford Fiesta ST comes to mind because the person I sold it to had to replace a control arm. They hit something and cracked it, but you couldn't just buy the control arm. You had to buy a complete assembly because they just won't sell you the individual parts. It's not an option. So these components in this Omega are not serviceable but are replaceable in a service. Does that make them better?
So the reason the coaxial escapement is potentially better,
and actually throw that under there so we can show it while we've got. Oh, I'm zoomed way too far in. I apologize. Wow.
There we go.
Okay. This is I'm almost sorry to see this one go because it is such a pretty movement in the back. So where are we looking here? Here's our balance wheel.
Yeah, and this
zoom right on down here.
Yeah, what do we have here? The 9300. So Omega started doing their coaxial by actually just integrating the coaxial components into already produced ETA movements.
Oh.
And they used a traditional beat rate, 28.8. Now they've changed it. It's a kind of off the wall beat rate. It's better for these parts.
Okay.
28.8 was a little fast for the
components. So
components.
what is this now?
I believe it's 25.2.
Oh.
I don't think it says, but I'm pretty sure it's 25.2. I don't really service the coaxials, but I'm pretty sure it's 25.2.
Okay.
And it's because they had a couple of issues when they first started making the coaxial. George Daniels created it. And then when Omega implemented it,
did he create it for Omega or for him?
No,
for
he
himself?
he created it, and then he made movements for other manufacturers. He made a Patek Philippe movement with the coaxial in it. He made a Rolex with the coaxial in it.
Wow, I didn't think these companies were like hiring independent contractors on this kind of stuff, huh?
They were not. He did it on his own. Wow. He did it completely on his own, and he then went to the companies to try and sell them the technology, and it was kind of new and weird and not exactly heavily tested at that point.
So is a George Daniels watch like priceless if you were to have one that was made by him?
Yeah.
Does it even exist? Is it something that someone could have?
I believe that some of them have gone up in auction since he passed.
How long ago did he die? Is this recent? I mean, we're talking
in the last 5 years. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So this is recent.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, and he was a car collector as well.
Oh, really?
He had a serious Bentley collection. Actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
George Daniels was an interesting guy. He was.
Let's see if the internet knows anything about George Daniels' Bonhams, the outstanding George Daniels motor car collection to be sold at Goodwood. Wow. Well, forgive me, watch people, if I have to take a quick dive into George Daniels' car collection, but let's see what's on the... Oh, this is from 2012. Wow, boy, does he have some vintage Lagonda. Wow, that is a beautiful Bentley Continental S1. He has some really old stuff. Jaguar E-Type. Lovely old motorcycles. All right. He probably... big. Oh, wait, what does this say? Excess of $8 million. 8 million pounds. Is that what that says there?
Yeah.
Cameron? I can't.
Yeah, 8 million pounds.
Can you... it's unfortunately is too far away for me to read that small print. Do you see any highlights of the winners there? I can't. I see 29 Bentley 4.5 liter supercharged. Yup. Oh, which run the Brooklyn's lap record. Wow.
Sir Henry Tim Birkin.
That is extremely gangster.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, all right. Good for you, George Daniels. Nicely done, sir. I guess creating coaxial escapements pays off. So is there anything on this actual watch that is worth pointing out visually on my Omega there?
It's hard to see anything. The one thing that they do have here is dual barrels as well. You've got these twin barrels, and on
how do you
these,
can't even really see those,
right? The only way I can see them is I know that they're colored black. So these little black parts that are peeking out here.
Yep.
So just because I know that
now I can see
that
them.
they're black. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, black is sort of the thing with this watch.
Yeah. And then you've got the silicon balance wheel, which is black as well under here. But there's really not a whole lot you can see because it's such small components.
Yeah.
And they're all kind of hidden under here. But this is one of the current models that uses the coaxial.
Soon to be available for sale at crownandcaliber.com. Use code, what's my code? MATT150. Gets you $150 off. MATT150. Am I blocking? Do we need to adjust our
Let's get our exposure down.
exposure? Our camera looks a little reflecty today. Oh, there you go. Yeah, there you go. And stop touching it, Cameron.
Sorry, I'm trying to get these glares. We got to fix this. There we go.
There you go.
We're better now.
We're slightly off. Yeah, we're good there. Shazam.
Okay.
Shazam. Oh, boy.
We have to do this watch justice.
Yeah, right? Make it look nice. There.
Right?
There we go.
I mean,
that looks good. It's a very pretty watch.
yeah.
Okay, let's check out another escapement. What else? What do we have next on our list after the...
I would go to the AP escapement.
The AP escapement.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the AP escapement looks like this. And it is... What is up with you? Why are you so big? Okay. What is AP old school, one of the big three? What have they been around for? 200 years? 150 years?
They've been around a very long time, and they've been continually operating.
That's the thing,
which
right?
Is pretty rare.
That's that gets you into the big three. It's continually operating, right?
That, and they are still privately owned. So, and also they have family members, original family members that are on the board.
That's rare these days.
Very rare for a watch company to have that.
Yeah.
I
think you did say, I was reading before we started recording this, our ideas for lists of episodes, and one was like the family tree of corporations and watchmakers and how that family tree leads to watches being what they are.
Yeah,
which I found very interesting. Which we're gonna do a show on that for sure. So, what has AP contributed to the world of escapements?
So AP came up with their own oilless escapement.
Oilless, it means less servicing. It means what does oilless mean?
So less service, because mainly what you're going to see on a watch, if it's a manual wind watch, you're going to see a timing error.
Okay.
And then you're going to say, "Oh, I have to service this watch because it's running too slow or it's running too fast. Something's wrong with the timing."
Okay.
Maybe it has a shorter power reserve, and only when it's fully wound, it's keeping time, and then as it kind of after 12 hours, maybe it stops keeping time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to be because your escapement oils have evaporated. They're kind of gummy.
Is that what
sticky.
they do? They evaporate? They don't gunk up and get like hard and crusty? They just kind of...
the moisture evaporates, and then you end up with a crusty...
and then what's left gets crusty.
Yeah.
Right.
So that will mess things up with the timing. And one way to avoid that is eliminate the oil.
Eliminate the oil! Okay, so what has AP done here?
What AP did, and they also have a higher beat rate on theirs, which is very impressive. To have a high beat rate
and eliminate the oil.
It's 42,000 something. I forget the exact number, but it's 42,000 vibrations per hour.
It's so very, very high, right?
Yeah,
is that the highest in the game?
Yeah, it's higher than the El Primiros. It's not the highest in the game,
it's higher
but
than
it's
Grand
very
Seikos too, right? That's even higher than the high beat Seikos. Yeah.
Yeah, it's higher than the high beat Seikos, and the very interesting thing is they don't use any silicon. Traditional materials.
Wow.
Traditional pallet jewels, traditional escape wheel, traditional balance, traditional hairsprings.
So what does it take to get that kind of speed out of traditional materials without lubricants? Is that all in design?
Exactly.
Crazy.
They redesigned it. So they actually have two opposing hairsprings on their balance wheel.
Okay.
So it's two levels of hairsprings. One's coiling clockwise, one coils anti-clockwise.
Okay.
And then you've got your escape wheel, which is like with the George Daniels escapement, being directly, the escape wheel is directly impulsing the balance wheel. So you don't have that sliding friction I was talking about with the Swiss lever.
So it's not a brush, it's a tap. It's a quick tap.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's a quick tap directly to the balance instead of sliding along the pallet fork and then slowly making its way around and into the balance. So you don't lose that energy through the pallet fork, which is great. And
So
you
there's
also
no
don't have that
pallet
sliding
fork.
friction.
There's no pallet
There
fork
is a
at
pallet
all.
fork, but the pallet fork is just for locking and unlocking.
Oh, okay.
No impulse of the balance wheel.
Oh, so
Whereas
is
Swiss
it
lever is
somewhere
locking,
else?
unlocking, impulse back and forth from the balance to the escape and the escape to the balance. So there's a lot of energy being lost through your pallet fork in a Swiss lever.
Okay.
And that's also why you have the oil on it, because you could lose even more with all that friction. So direct impulse on the AP escapement. So, and direct impulse, whenever I say that, that basically means your escape wheel is directly touching the balance wheel
Okay.
rather than working through the pallet fork.
Right.
The fork is just releasing teeth.
So in this image on the top left, this bluish circle here, is that the hub of the balance wheel?
Yes, and then you can see it has two jewels there. The half moon shaped jewel.
In this shown in, was it pink? Purple and pink?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm colorblind, so whatever color that is fucking me all up. Sorry, it's purple or pink or
The
something.
hub is like a blue color.
Yeah.
And then the jewels are pink or ruby.
Yeah.
And what you've got is that half circle jewel is the one that is knocking your pallet fork
Okay.
and allowing it to unlock teeth on the escape wheel. But this other one that looks like a sharpened tooth right there, that one is actually being hit
Yeah, that's what I was
by
gonna say.
the teeth on the escape wheel.
Yeah, because it looks like this escape wheel is it's a one-way cog.
Yes.
So it looks like it can only really be hit this one way that it's being shown.
Yes, exactly. So this will swing this way.
Yeah.
It'll swing back, and this will advance. Once this comes back, and then it hits right there. So it's very complex. However, there's adjustability. These jewels can move back and forth.
So is this the pallet fork? This
Yes.
thing? So
Yeah.
the pallet fork in this image is this whole sort of big thing across the top right side of the escape wheel, right?
Yeah, and it's a different shape than the Swiss lever.
It doesn't look very forky.
Yeah.
It looks just but so the red jewels inside of it here on either side of this is a pivot.
Yeah, and all they're going to do is basically keep the wheel from spinning further.
Yeah.
So it'll lock on this tooth, it'll lock on that tooth, and it'll just kind of go back and forth.
Oh, you see, here's
alternating
what
where
this
it locks.
this drawing. See, because you have seen this assembly before in 3 dimensions.
Yeah.
I'm having a little bit of trouble because I'm looking at it in 2 dimensions.
Yeah, this
and what
rocks
I'm not
back and
seeing
forth.
is that the where. Well, how do I explain this? Jesus, I'm not seeing physically where the jewels are hitting the escape wheel.
Exactly, because
Because
those
I'm
ones
seeing
currently
it in 2 dimensions.
it's showing what we call impulse.
Yeah.
Where and because it's direct impulse, the escape wheel is impulsing the jewel on the balance.
Yeah.
So it's going to impulse there, which is going to knock this further this way. And this is going to drop this way,
Yeah.
and that tooth is going to lock on that jewel right there.
Yeah, so what it's hard to see from this image is that the 2 jewels on the right are actually controlling the motion of the escape wheel and not
stopping
the
it.
other wheel on the top, not the other jewel on the top left.
Yeah. The other one on the top left is being hit.
Yeah.
By
I wonder
the
if
escape
If
wheel.
I go back, you think I can? Oh, no, I opened it in a new window. Google Images has completely fucked me for doing a podcast like this because you used to be able to just big screen a Google Images, but I guess, people like me have ruined it for people like me because now you can't anymore.
And one other thing that they've got that you can see clearly here is shock protection. So if you could imagine, if you were to hit your watch on something
Yeah.
at just the right time,
It would completely mess up the...
It could knock these parts and they could fall the other way and
I'm
and
amazed
lock
it
everything
actually doesn't. I mean,
Right?
we need to do a whole episode on shock because, there was a whole thing like I take my guns and I take my watches and shoot shotguns and stuff with them, and like everyone says not to, but some people say it's okay, and we should do a whole thing on shock.
Yeah.
But I don't know how, me doing this doesn't completely, fuck up my watch.
Yeah, well, the idea is if everything has been adjusted properly and everything is perfect, it should not be able to unlock without the balance wheel being in just the right position.
Yeah.
So that's something that the AP escapement took into account, is that shock protection. So it's got a lot going for it. Especially, I think the most interesting thing is oilless and traditional watchmaking materials. That's very cool.
And can this be serviced, or is it kind of a no service?
It can be serviced,
just replaced.
Yeah, it can be serviced.
So it's more like the Swiss lever in terms of serviceability than it is like the coaxial escapement.
Yeah. The goal was to be traditional, but also have less service intervals by eliminating that oil.
Oh, and do APs have longer service intervals than some other watches?
Only the watches with the AP escapement. It's not in every watch.
Oh, because AP uses...
They also have... The majority of their watches are Swiss lever.
Oh,
they have a few models that are AP escapement models.
What models, like, you don't... No pressure, but like what types of... The Chronap.
Chronap.
What's
and
a
actually,
Chronap?
it's a pretty cool looking watch if you want to pull it up. Chronap.
We're gonna take a look at that right now. No.
Just one P.
Oh, sorry.
Audemars Piguet Chronap.
AP Chronap. Ooh,
this one
damn.
right here.
Is that you are pretty
Right?
well? I'm sorry for. I don't have time to do the whole extra window thing, so I'm just pulling it up like this. But I mean, that's very, very pretty. I mean, you typically when you think AP in today, you think Royal Oak variant, and this is not that.
Yeah.
How much are one of these? Looks expensive.
That one's platinum, and it was, I believe, $300,000, somewhere around there.
That's about right.
Yeah.
Look at some of these Chronaps. These are dope.
Yeah.
So can you get the AP escapement in any of the Royal Oaks?
Not that I'm aware of.
Oh, okay.
Unless it's one of the special,
like something like this. Who knows what that is?
That
offshore
one,
tourbillon.
That one is not. I'm trying to think.
That's
I don't
cool.
remember any of the Royal Oaks having it. I think the millinery they were using for the AP escapement, and I don't know if they've done it in Royal Oak yet.
And is it is that because it's so much more expensive to make, or is it just not a thing that's necessary for most of their watches, or if you come up with an innovation like that, is there a reason to not just put it in everything?
So the one downside to the AP escapement, and I don't think of it as a major downside, it's not a self-starting escapement. Meaning, if you have the watch and it's not running, and you go to wind it up, it's not going to start itself. Whereas a watch, like a Swiss lever, you wind it,
and
it's going to just start.
So how do you start it?
You have to actually twist it. You kind of shake it in a twisting motion.
You don't
to
just take
start
the watch
balance wheel.
apart.
No, you don't take the watch apart, but you'll hold the watch, and I can kind of show you. You'll just go like this.
Yeah.
And you go just like that.
Huh. And that's how you get it going.
Yeah, and that's how you get it going once you've wound it.
That's so weird.
So you have to put some energy in there to
that.
get the balance wheel started.
Can you damage it by doing it wrong?
No.
Okay.
No.
That's just it's like a technique
Yeah,
that'll be
it's just
$300,000,
a
and with it, I'll give you a free hour of
Free twist
training on
lesson.
how to start your escapement.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, look, this whole show's about weird escapements, and that's weird.
Yep.
But all right, cool. Next up, you want to do which I think our order is correct, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, we wanted to do this one, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
FP Jorn.
FP Jorn. FP Jorn is interesting watchmaker and watches because he makes really old school looking watches, but he makes them now, and he's not been around for all that long, right?
Yeah. Well, he has been around a long time.
Well, what's long though?
See, he's a watchmaker that's living,
Yeah.
still making watches.
So not that long.
Not that long
Yeah.
compared to the brands that were started hundreds of years ago.
Right.
Yes.
But he's alive.
Yeah, he's alive.
Weren't his first watches like in the 80s,
Um,
70s or 80s, something like that?
yeah, I think it was the 80s when he came out with when he made his first tourbillon. And then I believe the 90s when he started actually selling to public. But I could be off on that.
So it's
it's like 20, 25 years maybe.
Yeah. And I'm going to pull up, sorry. Oh my God, I just blanked.
Whoa.
I know, I'll make it, they'll fix it for me. So FP Journe, I think of FP Journe as really beautiful watches. They have a very unique style. Here's a picture of what your typical FP Journe looks like, and really interesting dial designs. And there's a lot of, every time I see on the internet something about FP Journe, it's like people are either all about it or sort of like kind of like brush him off.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
They're quite expensive,
Well,
and the design, I think, is very polarizing, especially when you look at the sport offerings.
and like this would be a sport offering, like a basic.
No, that's a beautiful watch. I think that's one of the least polarizing watches. I think everyone could agree that that's a beautiful
I think
watch.
it's a beautiful watch. What's a sport design look like?
Scroll up to the top and click on this one.
Oh,
right
this
there.
guy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those designs, not everyone loves them. They're different.
Yeah, I mean they're I think if I wanted an FP Journe watch, I would want something that was a little crazier and more, off the wall. This to me is like not crazy enough actually, or not normal enough. Like I want some weird steampunky, crazy thing if I want to go that way. So anyway, he has a very unique style, and if you see someone wearing one, you'll know immediately what it is. It's unmistakable. But where were we? Oh no, I lost my place in the. Oh no, here it is. Okay. So the escapement, though. I mean, is this escapement a driver of the funky dial designs that he's got, or is the other way around?
It's a little bit of both.
Okay.
So it starts by having the tourbillon and wanting to display the tourbillon, and then the next thing that he is really big into is the remontoir.
What's a remontoir?
It's so, like I said before, having the right amount of power in the escapement and a regular amount of power, meaning whether you just wound the watch or you wound it a day ago, you want the same transfer of energy into the escapement.
Right.
So what this little feature does is actually stores a little bit of energy from the mainspring and then releases it every second.
Okay.
So you're taking, instead of just pouring out a big bucket of water and making a wheel turn, by a paddle wheel turn, you're actually pouring a big bucket of water into little vials. Oh. And then pouring the little vial onto a smaller wheel. So and then measuring it out.
So it measures okay, yeah, all right. That's a good one. So yeah, it's like instead of pouring from a big bag of, flour into your cake mix, you're measuring it out 1 cup at a time.
Yeah.
And pouring it in. Okay, so on this image, what is a remontoir? Is that this bottom left here?
Right-hand side, you've actually got so this part of the watch, just by the design, it will measure out 1 second increments.
Okay.
So he's got that displayed on the watch, and it actually runs backwards.
Wait, what?
So
what do you mean?
When a wheel interacts with a pinion, you switch directions.
Right. Yeah, okay. Yes.
So in order to have that second move forward, he would have to add another wheel.
Right.
It would get a little complex, and the idea behind all these components is they have to be very lightweight.
Yeah.
If they're heavy, you add friction. So lightweight, you lose less power. So he's trying to make it as lightweight as possible. And by adding another wheel into that gear train, it'll slow it down.
So his second hand goes the other way?
So just for this feature, and it's actually on the back of the watch.
Oh.
And you can watch it go backwards. It'll go 1 second, and it stops. It's like a deadbeat second. Basically, it's full power, advancing, and then it's dead. There's no more power once it stops.
Right.
So it looks like a quartz watch, where it's like hacking.
So it looks like it's ticking, like a watch. Ticking. But what it's really doing
is just releasing energy to the balance in an organized fashion so that you get the same impulse every second rather than a lot of force at the beginning of a wind and a little force at the end of the wind.
Wow. And is this like a trademarked thing for him? Like, is he the only guy doing this?
No, he's one of the best watchmakers doing it right now, and it's something that he is heavily invested in his designs, having a lot of watches that focus on that. But there are other watchmakers that are doing the same thing, and not always in the same way. He's using titanium wheels, which are very lightweight. He's also got, on top of that function there, the actual escapement is unique as well in this watch.
Yeah,
so this is like intro to the escapement, the power, how the power is getting to the escapement, which he also has, I believe, dual barrels as well for the mainspring. So a lot of even power coming through. Then you've got the remontoir, and then you've got the power going into the escapement.
So in this image, the actual escapement is on the bottom left here.
Yeah, those darker components over here is what's really different.
Yeah, my mouse is circling it, if you can see that.
And here, again, you've got two escape wheels.
Two wheels, yeah. So,
and he's got 6 teeth on each escape wheel. So what he did is he split the number of teeth. Instead of having 14 teeth on an escape wheel, or 12. Instead of having 12 teeth, he has 6 teeth on each one.
And it bounces back and forth the wheels, right?
Yeah, and so he can even out the force from whether the pallet fork is swinging one direction or swinging the other direction. The force should be equal.
Ordinarily, if you, like a normal watch, only have one escape wheel, is the force not equal?
It could potentially be unequal.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's all these little things that add up to making a watch that you know how much power is going into the balance wheel, whether it's fully wound, partially wound, or almost empty, so that you can have a more accurate regulating organ in the watch.
I want to see if I can find a remontoir real image. So what are we?
Oh, for the let's see.
Here's on the back, right?
Yes, that is the one.
All right, so let's pull that up. So here we're looking at the back. God, this is such a pretty movement, huh? And here is our remontoir, which it looks just like sort of a second hand.
Exactly.
And so that will go
backwards. You see how it's counting backwards? 10, 20, 30.
And then will this watch have a second hand on the front as well?
I don't think it does. I think it's just hours and minutes on the... Yeah,
remontoir. Yeah, so it's just hours and minutes in the front.
So he could have a running second hand if he wanted to, but it would just chooses not to.
Yeah.
It's not really in his design element to have that running second hand, if you notice on his watches.
Yeah, most of his watches are just hours and minutes.
Because you can typically see the balance in his watches or some movement. And a lot of times...
you know it's going.
Yeah, you know it's running
yeah.
based on other things than the second hand.
That would probably drive me the most crazy about having a watch without a second hand with a mechanical movement.
Exactly.
It's like, is it going? I got to wait like 3 minutes to figure out if this thing is even moved. You know? These FPs are very pretty. Well, these things are like 30 to 100 grand, right?
They're very expensive.
Yeah, so these are definitely like a not in my lifetime purchase.
Yeah. And so with this escapement, you go oilless, you go 2 escape wheels. The escape wheels are made of titanium as well, very lightweight.
Beautiful remontoir picture.
Exactly, as well as the remontoir. So very
at this level
distribution.
we're talking about here, where the watches are deep in the 5-figure range. Are we no more lubricants? We're out of lubricants.
Not necessarily.
No,
okay. Not necessarily.
Okay.
And an interesting thing about the coaxial, it was intended to be a lubrication-free escapement. And the George Daniels version, lubrication-free. The Omega version is not lubrication-free.
Oh, really?
It requires some lubrication.
Oh.
They've made updates to it, but essentially what happened is the way George Daniels was making it is not the way that Omega went ahead and made it. They made some changes, and they needed to add lubrication. So it was a little different. But the idea behind it is that it should have been lubrication-free.
In theory.
Yes. But the higher-end ones where you get up into these hundreds of thousands of dollars, they're truly lubrication-free.
Yeah. Because then we start getting to really crazy materials.
Yeah.
Anything else on?
So again, he's traditional materials like the AP escapement, which I think is very cool as a watchmaker. I really doubt that in 100 years you're going to be able to open up a watch with a silicon escapement, and if you've got some worn components or damaged components, how are you going to replace them?
I don't know.
How are you going to fix them?
Do you think silicon gets worn? Do you think you think it lasts longer?
I think so. I mean, even if it's a screw comes loose in the movement and then blocks up a wheel and you break a tooth or something like that, it could really be anything. The water gets in there. So the traditional materials, to me as a watchmaker, I think are very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say that the silicon escapements are not interesting, but I just don't necessarily know about, 100 years from now, if there will be people who are able to open it up and fix it, similar to how we can open watches that are hundreds of years old and fix them because they were made with technology that is still really accessible for the average watchmaker, whereas I don't see silicon technology becoming accessible for the average watchmaker.
Yeah. Cool. FP Journe. Moving on. I'm sorry this is such a digital show, folks, for those watching. We don't have every watch we're talking about is like $50,000, so we don't have a lot of examples. We got to do it digitally. Gerard Perrigo.
Yes.
Cameron? Here's a crazy escapement. No, I'm sorry, my image is a little off here, folks.
Instead of looking like a regular escapement, this thing looks like some kind of butterfly insect. Just a very odd-looking system.
I don't really understand what it is that I am looking at, but something tells me that you do.
Yeah.
Okay. So
as well as I can without having ever seen one of these in person.
I don't know a lot about Girard Perregaux. What is their deal? I mean, I know they make a very high-end watch, but is there something that they do that's their thing?
They've been around a long time. Recently, they've kind of been, I don't know, not doing the best job with their designs and marketing and things like that. They're still a great company. They have amazing watchmakers and great teams of people working on everything, but they haven't really been hitting it out of the park as far as getting the word out there and coming up with designs that people are really getting behind. Overall aesthetic designs.
Yeah, but they have a cool escapement.
Yes, they do have a very cool escapement.
All right, so what is this called and how does it work?
So this is their I'm blanking on the name.
Oh no, did you blank on the name?
It's their Constant Force escapement. Gerard Perregaux Constant Force, which Constant Force is kind of like a general term, and anyone who says Constant Force, all they're really saying is from when the watch is fully wound, it's going to have the same amount of force going into the escapement as when it's almost empty.
Okay.
So Constant Force, and this has silicon components, things that could only be made with the technology we have today and only in laboratories with all these PhDs and scientists working on basically building these parts from molecules. But you can get a very accurate part, and that's what they had to do to get this whole framework that goes around this escapement and makes it work.
So this pink-red thing, I can, again, color, sorry.
Yeah,
if that's correct. Purple,
yeah.
It's actually sort of like a bridge or like a frame, right?
Yes, it's really a spring, basically. It's a large spring, and you've got your balance wheel, which will go back and forth.
Big black round wheel.
Yeah, the black silicon balance wheel here. And it's got your standard roller jewel. Nothing new there.
Mm-hmm.
And you've
That's
got
right in the middle on the hub here.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then you've got your Pallet Fork, which goes between that balance wheel and the stones on the other side, which touch the dual escape wheels.
So that runs vertically right up the middle here.
Yes.
And then it's got a jewel on either side there.
Yeah, jewel on either side. And this one has a funny shape of those wheels, but you've got 3 teeth on either wheel.
Right.
So these wheels are going to be moving around very quickly.
Right, because it's got to be twice as fast as the one we just looked at that had 6 teeth on each wheel, right?
And this is not a high beat escapement. It's 21,600. So you actually have a nice long power reserve.
Okay.
I forget how many days, but I think it's like 5 days or something like that.
The lower the beats, the longer your reserve in general?
In general, yeah.
Okay.
And I think this one also has dual mainsprings paired with the slower beat rate. So that's a good thing for this. But also, you can see this escapement on the dial side of the watch.
It's
kind of cool to see those wheels spinning quickly.
Hang on. I want to find. I should have. I should have found a picture beforehand, and I'm sorry I didn't, because it looks extremely cool when you look at that. Here, look how cool this is. I mean, it's a pretty cool looking dial.
Yeah,
and it's
so you can see the dual barrels behind the time area in the top half.
And even if you look at it in 3 dimensions, it has some dimension to it, which is very, very cool.
Yeah.
And then here's a zoomed in image on there.
So you've got those wheels, so 6-day power reserve it looks like on there. But those escape wheels will be turning very fast. And what happens here is the jewel will be hit by it almost ramps up to that tooth.
Yeah.
To knock it forward.
We can go back.
It'll run along that ramp.
Here's our original animation. So
this wheel here is going to turn this way.
So the one on the right turns
on the right-hand side
clockwise.
And the jewel is going to ramp up to the tooth and then stop. As it kind of ramps up, it pushes it this way.
Yeah.
You see that ramp there?
It goes
push towards the center.
Yeah.
And as it gets to the center, this little thing that's under tension here, this long blade-looking device that wraps around.
Ribbon that goes across the center horizontally, yeah.
So as this moves, this part here is attached to it, this long tail.
Okay.
And it will rock this way and essentially snap this part.
Oh, yeah. So it'll tension the right side of it.
Exactly. So you've got this extra force that's kind of being stored in that S-curve there, in that silicon part that is surrounding everything that looks like a butterfly, and it will snap the other direction as the Palate Fork ramps up the tooth on the escape wheel, which is unique. I haven't seen that in any other escapement design. And then you'll have your balance will come back again and knock it off of that tooth that it had just locked on, and it will do the same thing on the other side, where it ramps up and snaps back the other way.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
And it looks good when it's in a watch, too. Some of these are extremely dope. I mean, look at that. This is some craziness. Is that the back or the front? That's the back. That's the back, but I wish it was the front. That
is the back.
You can put the clock on that. I'll just look at that. These watches look very cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's certainly a neat escapement. This is like a defining feature of this company, then, huh?
Yes. I think this is the biggest thing to come from them in a long time.
It's really, really cool looking. I'm trying to find the best. That's a good zoomed in image of it there. Really, really cool. And so the idea just being it's better at regulating that even force all the way until it runs out of juice.
Yeah, over the whole 6 days of power reserve, keeping everything regular so that the timing doesn't change, and also eliminating the need for lubrication.
No lubricants there either, yeah.
And the reason they won't have lubricants here, I believe, is going to be the material. I'm not sure about what kind of sliding frictions, because you do have sliding friction on that escape wheel.
Yeah. Well, you wouldn't want to have lubricants, right? Because you can see it all. Wouldn't it get all messy?
You might not see the lubricants. It could be very little, but I don't know what material that escape wheel is.
Oh.
But my guess is it's going to be a silicon material or some kind of material that is good for frictionless and does not need oil in the first place. So that's the upside to a silicon escapement. You can make a regular Swiss lever escapement design, but make all the parts out of silicon.
Voila.
And then you don't need oil on a Swiss lever.
Yeah, okay, cool.
So
I'm going to bring up an escapement that I know about. Hey, about this, I know something. This one, I actually had the privilege of going to Switzerland and going to visit the Ulysse Nardin factory. And this is the Ulysse Nardin Anchor Escapement, which, believe it or not, is a thing that I know about. So here you see your escape wheel, which has a really cool design to it. I think it's got a lot of teeth. It's probably 24 teeth, I think. Is that all in multiples of 12 or 6?
No, actually, the standard escape wheel is going to have 15 teeth.
Oh,
that'll
will?
Be a regular escape wheel. It'll be about 15 teeth.
Okay, well, I have not counted this one, but why is it 15? What does 15 have to do with the math?
So it gets really complex.
Oh, no. Did I just open a door that I don't want to go down right now?
Probably.
Do we need to have a separate show that's a math day?
I'll touch it real quick, but I'm not going to go too in depth.
Okay.
You have the angle that's on your pallet forks, on the teeth, the jewels there, and then you have the angle of the heel of that escape wheel tooth.
Okay.
And the way that those interact and slide against each other, there's a certain degree that those need to be for them to slide and have just the right amount of friction and transfer of energy, so that everything works the best that it can. So that's how we kind of design it, is using set angles and then working from there. So you just kind of end up with that number of teeth.
Okay. Whatever that math
is. In that
is.
range,
Yeah,
really.
yeah. Okay. So Ulysse Nardin, high-end watchmaker, been around for a while. They are all about silicone. All about silicone. In fact, I think, were they kind of the pioneers of silicone? They bragged like they were when I was on the tour.
They definitely are, because I believe they're doing it in-house as well.
They are doing their in-house.
They own all their equipment, and they've invested heavily in it.
Yeah, their factory is. I didn't go to their final assembly factory. I went to their movement factory, and it was very lab-like. Much more lab-like than factory-like. So this escapement is really neat, and it's actually kind of tricky to see in this image which parts of it are the whole escapement. So I have, and I'm going to probably get in trouble, because I'm literally going to play this video, and so you see how it moves here. The point of this thing is, here is your escapement. And is this the Pallet Fork? I guess.
Yeah, that's the Pallet Fork.
That's the Pallet Fork. The Pallet Fork doesn't have a pivot at all. They decided that a pivot is a point of friction that they don't want in their life. And so holding the Pallet Fork both horizontally and vertically are these strips of silicone, which, like a band saw, if you were to bend it, or like Cameron just described in the Perregaux movement, as these things get knocked back and forth, they bend and bounce back and forth, but they're also holding that pallet fork up by way of this other sort of lateral structure. And wait, there you go, keep playing. And I just think that's very cool. And it's also in a tourbillon, so as you can see, the whole thing is spinning around and round. But I just think the idea of using those bands that bounce back and forth is so neat.
Yeah, that, and then, again, silicon components, so oilless there.
Mm-hmm. It really was very frustrating because this tour was extremely cool, and I learned so much. And after spending 3 hours with these guys, like, all I wanted was a watch with the Anchor Escapement, and then they told me how much they were. and Ulysse Nardin makes they do make watches that are like in the 4-figure price range, but anything that's got an Anchor tourbillon in it is like $80,000 and up. It's very, very expensive, but I don't know. That to me was like a super neat kind of thing, because like, how do you have something go back and forth at evenly without a pivot?
Yeah, without any other.
Yeah, like there's no lateral like twisting, and like there's no gravity, like there's no drooping. Like, it's crazy that can do that, and without the pivot point, no less, is super wild. So I want to finish off with you brought this one up.
Yeah.
Tell me what this is. And I have to sort of adjust the picture a little bit so we can see all of it. What are we looking at here?
So this is a balance wheel for something that Parmigiani has been working on with some other movement designers, and it's essentially similar in having these bands and only available because of the new kind of technologies for making silicon parts. But these really thin bands and flexible parts of the balance. And instead of a balance wheel swinging back and forth like 300 degrees, this only swings back and forth about 15 degrees. So
That's not very much.
Barely swinging back and forth.
Yeah, and actually, look, I pulled up a video. Here we go. Here's videos. Hang on, I'll go back. Here's video of this thing moving, and this is real time, right?
Yeah, that's real time.
I messed up. Sorry, we'll go back further.
And it's called the Senfine escapement.
Parmigiani Fleurier Senfine. I'm sorry, it's such a short video clip.
Yeah.
Can you play it at half speed? Wait, is there a half speed thing? Can I do that? I don't think so.
So it essentially they slowed it down so that it takes very little power to actually move that balance wheel.
Right, because moving the balance wheel 15 degrees versus moving it 300 degrees and speeding it up and slowing it down and start going the other direction, it just takes way less energy to do that, right?
Yeah, exactly. So a lot less energy to move that balance wheel, which allowed them to get I believe a 70-day power reserve.
Did you say 70?
70
7-0 day.
7-0.
That
and actually, I believe it's 70
absurd.
days, something like that. It's crazy.
Completely absurd.
Yeah, and it's a totally different escapement because
It doesn't look like any of the other escapements.
Yeah, you literally have your balance wheel kind of bouncing back and forth, and you saw those two pins coming down from the top that are interacting with some weird holes in the balance wheel, and the balance wheel's kind of touching those and bouncing back and forth. It's a lot of these springs that are all integrated into single components, whereas traditional watchmaking, you'll have your balance wheel, you'll have a spring that's then colleted and attached to it. But with this new technology where they're shooting tiny little electrons and everything.
It's like molecular
plate.
3D printing, right?
Molecular printing, basically. Yeah. So they're able to make these really fine components and make them in one piece.
Yeah, so when you have that molecular structure, you get rigidity and all that kind of stuff, right?
So they can literally put a spring wherever they want within that component where it's integrated, and then they have this basically like these grasshopper kind of legs coming off with these springs that are then interacting with that really fine-toothed escape wheel where you have far more than 15 teeth on it.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, I don't know, I can't count, but was it 50, something, 60? And it's just these tiny little ribbons of probably silicone, right? Are interacting with it. It's not like a heavy duty gunk 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 gunk. It's just these tiny. I mean, they look like hairs, thin, interacting with that.
Yeah, and they'll bend and flex, and then they'll spring back.
Can I go back? Let's go back to the video. Now that you know what to look for, let's watch again, and you can actually see the little tiny teeth. See them? They have actually like shrouds around them. You see those little fork shrouds?
Yeah.
Around them as they were bouncing back and forth. So cool. It's just like such. See, on the one hand, a 70-hour power reserve is awesome. On the other hand, it's like you kind of want to see some like motion. Like I like looking at the back and seeing something going on. And so like I'm not sure.
I mean, you see it moving, but it's not swinging so far.
Yeah.
But you definitely see it move, especially because you have your pallet fork are these really long arms of springs that are kind of grabbing and almost hugging the wheel, the escape wheel. So you see a lot of movement there.
I was on a dead YouTube page.
Instead of seeing the balance wheel swing back and forth, you're really seeing the
escape wheel moving around, right?
The escape wheel, but the biggest thing you're going to see move is what is kind of like the pallet fork, but really it doesn't look like any kind of pallet fork, but it's
bouncing back and forth
on that escape wheel.
Well, them's some escapements.
Yeah. That's
an hour. We always like, are we going to finish up? How long is it going to take? It's an hour and 10 minutes on escapements.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I feel like I learned something there. It's a tough concept, really, because you kind of have to visualize the motion of these machines, and sometimes in 2 dimensions is difficult.
Yeah, and it's not a single direction of energy flow. It's the energy is flowing in both directions, back and forth from component to component, and that's why they're able to run so efficiently over long periods of time.
Yeah, crazy stuff. All right, let's end this one. Follow myself on Instagram at The Smoking Tire. Follow Cameron M. Weiss on Instagram. Of course, the Weiss Watch Company. If you want to buy a watch made by this gentleman, made here in Los Angeles, he's got you covered. Thank you to our sponsors, Beeline Coffee. Hit them up on Instagram. I've been drinking this Beeline coffee all show. It's lovely. And, of course, Crown and Caliber. Use code MATT150 and get yourself $150. $150.
You can get yourself a coaxial escapement. Get one of these weird escapements
for $150. And make sure you subscribe to us wherever you get podcasts. Leave a comment on iTunes or a rating if you use iTunes. I know I hate anyone who's like, leave a comment, click like. In iTunes specifically, it's the only place where I care because it affects the rankings of the show. So the more ratings and reviews we get on iTunes, the higher we move in the rankings quicker. And, of course, on YouTube, it's youtube.com/watch and listen podcast. Anything else, buddy, before we get out of here?
No, my brain hurts a little bit from
I know. We're going to take a 10-minute break, and then we're going to see these people next week as we discuss maintenance and as Cameron takes apart and rebuilds and services one of his watches for us, which should be really cool. Until then, this podcast is hosted on Shout Engine. Get your own podcast at shoutengine.com. It's very easy. It takes almost no time at all, and even a dumb lug like me could do it. Thanks, guys. We will see you next week.